just really want to be here.
Well,
You know, I want to be back here. It's nice. So you only get to visit because I'm in retirement. You know, because I'm just lying around all day and I don't have that much energy to do things like go visit people. No, but I'll tell you the truth. We have been extraordinarily busy. I think it's true to say Frederica's probably doing less public speaking. It's just hard to get out of Tennessee. We don't have planes yet. I mean, nationally, it takes some effort to get out. So, but you're doing a lot of stuff with Zoom, you're still writing, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, that ministry's still happening. That's great. And I get to serve at the altar with my son. And, you know, most Sundays he serves as the protos, which means he stands at the, front of the altar, and I stand over here, just far enough to tell him what he's not doing. and he loves that. He won't admit it. He doesn't look like it. He doesn't say anything. But I know. It's a real joy. But in addition to that, I've also been doing some mission work. The bishop will send me to various places that are not terribly far away. In West Jefferson, North Carolina. If y'all know Boone, North Carolina, we have a parish that just moved from Boone to West Jefferson because they just bought this little, it's a country church. It's really about the size of Holy Cross, really. Country church, looks like a North Carolina country church, and they just moved an iconostas in. And, I mean, it just transformed the place. So I served there for a month, most of November. And that was very, very nice. And then I've been traveling back and forth taking care of my mom, who's now had her 99th birthday. But unfortunately, at this point, we've needed to move her into a memory care unit. But she's being very, very much taken care of, and she's enjoying it. She's socializing, and she wins at bingo. I don't know. She probably cheats. She always cheats with cards. That's why I say that. She'd be the first to admit it. Anyway, so we've been very busy with grandchildren and all these kinds of things too. So we're doing well, and it's all by your prayers. By your prayers. So Frederica and I have been talking about what to do this morning, and the only thing we decided is she would go first. Oh, icon, we have to. Father really fluffed this over.
Something to live up to. So let's see, he gave a little, I'm going to also do a little quick recap because the same questions are being asked of me over and over again. We are loving retirement. Where does the time go? Somehow, it's like it just evaporates. We thought when we were in retirement, semi-retirement, that there'd be all this extra time, and somehow there really isn't. So that's one of God's little mysteries.
But I didn't welcome mine. I mean, speaking of people in retirement who hardly still.
The deacon greets you all, Deacon Mark. He said, don't forget to greet them, and I've forgotten over and over.
We have now 15 grandchildren. Megan had 3, Stephen had 3, David has 9. So, so I will impose on you during lunch and show you photos of the cutest little, 2-year-old kissing her icon that just arrived from Romania as of yesterday. What else is more? Oh, people ask me about Jocelyn's health, because you remember she was very ill in the winter of 2009, and she was in and out of the hospital 5 times in a couple of months. She was desperately sick. She has lupus, and so when she got the flu, it went from flu to pneumonia to sepsis within a week, and so that was a scary time. It was before Christmas, and the hospital was so sweet to them. They were also anxious about, we had to get her home for Christmas Eve, And they did, although she had to come right away. But her health has improved, and she's now in remission. Thank you for your prayers. She was able to run the marathon on Thanksgiving and beat her previous time. So Jocelyn is doing great. Jocelyn, Steve, Ruthie, Lucas, and Irene, you certainly remember her. And people always say, what are you writing? And I'm doing more videos online. When I write an essay, instead of sending it to a magazine or journal, I just record it. And then usually the audio goes on Ancient Faith on my podcast, and the video goes on my YouTube channel, and the text goes on my blog. So I kind of, hit all those different forms of media. I am still working on a book that will be a spiritual autobiography that will include all the supernatural, we know it's all one, supernatural experiences of my life, which usually makes people look embarrassed for me, like people are going to think you're a kook if you do that. But I'm seeing the change in the culture, and the time for the Enlightenment is over, and the craving for some kind of like ghosts or whatever, the craving for paganism. A lot of people are going to go into paganism and run back out screaming when they encounter demons. So the light of Christ is going to be there for them. And I've been keeping journals since I was 16, so I have a record of everything. I'm making my way through the journals and putting together this what will be very much too long book. I'll need a real editor for that. And I have been for several years now trying to identify what is the distinctive thing about Orthodoxy, apart from theology, apart from history. There's something that no matter where you go in the world, if you go in an Orthodox church, there's a feeling there. There's something, it's hard to define. And as different as the different Western churches are from each other, they're all alike in some way, and we're different, even when the theology is the same. So I'm trying to write a book, and I was calling it a detective story for a while, because what the heck is this thing? I don't even know what it is. Lately, I think it has to do with, the trendy name is re-enchantment. Discovering that the world is charged with the presence, the glory of God, as Gerard Manley Hopkins said. It will shine out like, it will shake out like shining from shook foil. The glory of God is just imminent in all of creation. You can't hold it back. I think that's what's different about Orthodoxy. But pray for me for those two books. I guess that's all right. That's all the recap we need to do. I'm sure I will start talking about more grandchildren later on, but for now, I'm going to, in my talk today, I'm going to be going through an essay I wrote for a book that was published by St. Vladimir Seminary Press a few years ago, Glory and Honor, Orthodox Christian Resources on Marriage. And I was asked to contribute an essay.
You don't have that in the bookstore?
No, I asked Roxanne, she doesn't. And also, I had a new book last year, and I don't know if you have this one. I self-published a book about the atonement, because that was one of the confusing trails, was I thought maybe it's the atonement theory. Maybe that's what causes the difference. I decided that's not it, though it contributes. So my new book I published a year ago is called Two Views of the Cross. And on the cover, you can see an icon of the crucifixion and a 17th century painting of the crucifixion from Holland. And as soon as you look at it, you see these are two different theologies. So that's it's a short book. I just summarize atonement theory. But this was an essay for Glory and Honor. Like elementary school students, writers are regularly asked to supply an essay to fit an assigned title. When I learned that the title of this essay would be The High and Holy Calling of Being a Wife, I did what any sensible person would do. I tried to get out of it. My husband and I celebrated our 49th anniversary last May, and the 50th coming up. And so I have extensive experience in being a wife, but whatever I've been doing around the house for the last 40-something years high and holy aren't terms that immediately spring to mind. For most of us, married life is something we make up as we go along, truths along the way. But usually we learn these immediately after it would have been really useful to know that truth. Whatever height or holiness might have resulted was entirely the Lord's doing, not our own. But that's true of everything we undertake, isn't it? We don't know what we're doing a lot of the time. We don't know what's going to happen next. We don't know whether what we just did or said was the right thing to do or say. And yet grace still emerges, sometimes at the most unexpected places. Sweetie and I got married May 18th, 1974, under a big oak tree outside Charleston, South Carolina, our hometown. The wedding party included a black lab wearing a red bandana around its neck. We processed through the clearing with our hippie friends standing on one side and astonished family members on the other. When we reached the tree, we turned around to the gathering and recited the passage, "God is alive, magic is afoot," from Leonard Cohen's novel. How many people knew that Leonard Cohen wrote a novel? From his novel, Beautiful Losers. We had asked our friend, an Episcopal priest, to conduct the service, and were disappointed when he told us we could not write our own vows. So instead, we selected the coolest option from that church's book of experimental services. We were hardly Christians at all, and would have been better described as syncretists, people who try to bring together all the religions and summarize it according to our own impeccable judgment as to what was important and what wasn't.
We were people of our time.
We were very much, I'm afraid, people of this time as well, 50 years later. We thought that all religions are equal. It doesn't really matter which one you follow. There are many paths up the mountain, we would say. And sometime later we realized that there are many paths up the mountain, and most of them end in cliffs where you fall off the mountain, except for the one that leads to Christ. We thought that Christianity was less profound than some other religions further east, but it was endearing in its own little way. About halfway through the wedding service, I read a Hindu prayer. My dress was a simple shift of unbleached muslin. Instead of a bouquet, I wore a circle of flowers in my hair. I meant this to be rebellious. I wasn't going to carry a bouquet. But the joke was on me because I didn't know about wedding crowns. And afterwards, as a string quartet played, we joined hands with our hippie friends and danced in circles under the trees. This seems like the place to say, I guess you had to be there. But you actually didn't have to be there. You're picturing it just fine. When archaeologists discover our wedding photos hundreds of years from now, they'll be able to place the date within 5 years. So now fast forward 25 years to the day that our youngest child, now Father Stephen, went off to college. I'd been out of town, and I got home that night. I stood in the kitchen while my husband reviewed the highlights of the day. The house seemed strangely empty, perhaps just reverberating slightly after all those years of nonstop music. He was talking to me, and I was looking at him. I was thinking, that's it? Just him and me now for the rest of our lives? It's a cliche for long married couples to say, there were ups and downs. But this is one of those sayings that became a cliche because it's true. As I looked forward that night, standing in the kitchen and contemplating the years ahead, I'd have said it was one of the downs. Children in the home had kept my days fun and full of busyness. Suddenly it was just him and me, and it didn't look like it would be enough. Is he making a
Yes.
It'll be my turn to make faces. But not long afterwards, I ran into an older friend who was enjoying post-retirement travel with his wife. He said, "We're more in love than ever. These have been the happiest days of our married life." And that gave me something to think about. So time passed, and at some later point I realized what my friend had said had become true for me too. At some point in that glacial, imperceptible pace of married life, something had changed, or maybe I had changed. And now I can say we're more in love than ever, and these truly are the happiest days of our married life. How that happened, I really don't know. I wonder if there's anything that I could say in general about the calling of being a wife. I only know about the calling of being a wife in this particular marriage. It seems like any advice that could apply to all wives everywhere would be so vague as to be useless. And I was doing some, before I was writing this, I was looking things up and looking for advice on marriage online. Not that there is any lack of that kind of advice given. I saw an online list that included a recommendation to, quote, confront and master the inevitable crises of life. Check. Yet people living in our culture today clearly need some help in learning how to make a marriage work. Statistics show 43% of first marriages fail in the first 15 years. Second and later marriages fail 60% of the time. Despite this, most people do little preparing for marriage, harboring an illusion that all that reckless, headstrong, early love will hold them together. When things get rocky, they don't know how to respond. Getting married is about the most far-reaching, life-changing thing most people ever do. But they go into it knowing less than they would if they were planning to buy a ferret. Why do people get married? How do they stay married? If there is a sanctity to marriage, a holiness in the husband's and wife's calling, what is the nature of that holiness? Just how much exalted significance can married life bear when it has to be conducted by people who are crabby, oblivious, or bored? I don't have wisdom adequate to such lofty questions, but over the years I've learned some lessons that I hope may prove helpful to others. 1. Perhaps the first difficulty is that we don't expect marriage to be difficult. We think we're in love and that solves everything. But as long as the two people in love are human, there are going to be misunderstandings, miscommunications, and misplaced expectations. The most pernicious factor in a marriage, in any relationship, in a friendship, anything, is a sneaking suspicion that the other person has more power, that he's getting his way too often and things aren't fair. You can develop a habit of wary watchfulness, standing guard over your rights, and viewing your husband with suspicion. It's easy to do this, and it's entirely contrary to our calling in Christ, which is to bear all things and embrace humility. A power struggle is a teeter-totter that never comes to rest. As both partners adapt to it in self-defense, they form a long-term habit of vigilance and mistrust. This makes them unwilling to risk generosity, unwilling to let past unfairness go. Nothing good comes of this. This mutually assured dysfunction occurs so naturally that preventing it requires deliberate counter-moves. We already know that we'd like to live in a different way. We already know that the people we most admire are those who are kind and generous, and that the best love stories are the ones marked by great self-giving. You can start living in such a story anytime you want to. All you have to do is start practicing generosity, humility, and self-giving. But since we're human and afraid of loss, it helps to make this goal mutual and explicit. One couple I know, a subtle wink, one couple I know made a vow on their wedding day to outserve each other. My husband and I evolved a pattern of making decisions based on who feels most strongly about the matter. If I want Chinese food and he really wants Italian, then we get Italian. The one who feels most strongly gets their way. If I really want him to watch a Jane Austen movie with me, he does until he falls asleep.
We do our best.
It counts. It counts.
It doesn't matter who won last time because a next time is always coming up. The future just keeps rolling into the present, and more good things to give and to receive will always be appearing. I was reading this aloud to my husband as he was driving yesterday, and he said this is really one of the most common problems he sees in marriage. Is It's not fair. You know, there isn't a balance of power. I deserve more than I'm getting. Go ahead.
In fact, I would say even, I don't know, 80% of the problems that come to us as pastors, at least in my experience, sit down with a couple, let's talk about what's the issue and so forth. And you dig and dig a little bit, and almost, 80% of the time we'll come around to this kind of a setup where there's no longer a kind of team vision. You're backed into the corners, you know, of the boxing ring. Yeah, exactly. And life begins to turn into that kind of competition and scorekeeping and all of those kind of things that, I mean, as I say these words, doesn't it sound like a setup for destruction? Yeah.
Does it sound like the evil one?
It sounds like exactly what the evil one